Theodore. He's a tugboat and a friendly tugboat too. Pushing and a pulling in the great big harbor, in the great big world is so much fun. So many brand new things to discover. Waking with the sun, gotta get the job done. Oh, Theodore and Emily, Bodak, Hank and George, and the harbor master too. A tugboat and a friendly tugboat too. A friendly tugboat too. Oh, Theodore likes to do the things that friendly tugboats do.
Hello. Do my fish look unhappy to you? They sure do to me. I wonder what's wrong. I think I'll call a pet shop. Hello, Pugwash Pet Shop? Yeah, it's the harbor master. You know, my fish look, well, they don't look happy. No, the fins are fine. No white spots on their scales. Oh, I see. Well, thank you very much. They don't think that fish can look unhappy. But they're my fish. I think I know if they're unhappy or not. I know what Theodore would say. No, he doesn't know my fish either. But he does know Pugwash. And let me start at the beginning. Theodore and Pugwash the mini-sub were going for a cruise together before dock time one night.
Theodore, do you think we'll ever get to go out on the ocean? Said Pugwash. Maybe. One day, said Theodore, when I'm an ocean tug. And I'm a great undersea explorer, added Pugwash. Well, we'll have fantastic adventures together. They were just passing Lily the lighthouse on their way back when Pugwash dived deep. Then she popped up again in another part of the harbor. Why did you do that? Theodore called, moving over to Pugwash. Oh, I don't like lighthouses, explained Pugwash, kind of sheepishly. Why not? Theodore wanted to know. First, they shine their light, explained Pugwash, and then they blow their foghorn. It's a very scary sound. I thought undersea explorers aren't afraid of anything, smiled Theodore. Oh, I know that, said Pugwash. But she couldn't stop a little shiver running down her hull when she heard that foghorn again. The following morning, Stewiacke took Pugwash to the shoreline outside the big harbor. Pugwash was going to take underwater pictures. Remember that Ecum-Secum Circle isn't far from here, said Stewiacke. Stay close. I know, said Pugwash. You see, some said Ecum-Secum Circle was a place where ships sometimes got lost forever. Diving, announced Pugwash. Time passed quickly that day. Pugwash cruised along, taking pictures of the underwater rocks along the coast. Soon, it was time for her to come up again. But Pugwash was in for an awful surprise. She broke through the surface and saw Lunenburg Lighthouse. Lunenburg was shining her light, but Pugwash just knew what was coming next. Foghorn, she shuddered and dived again. As deep as she could go. Back in the big harbor, Theodore returned from work to find a dispatcher talking to Emily in an urgent voice. Stewiacke has reported that Pugwash is missing, he said. I would like you to help find her. I want to go too, Theodore said right away. This is a job for an ocean tug, the dispatcher told him. You just don't know the area outside the harbor well enough, Theodore. But I know Pugwash, said Theodore in a firm voice. He does spend more time with her than anyone else, said Emily. The dispatcher was thoughtful for a moment. Very well, Theodore, he said. But remember, Constance will be in charge out there. Meanwhile, Pugwash had found the entrance to an underwater cave. I'll be safe from that lighthouse in here, she told herself. Pugwash slowly entered the cave. Then she thought she heard voices. She turned and got a fright. 3 rocks were staring at her. Who? What are you? She stammered. And lo and behold, the rocks began to speak. Harum scarum, shockum freakum. We're the rhyming rocks of Ekum Seekum. Boo, added the 3rd rock. And that's when Pugwash knew she had dived straight into the terrible Ekum Seekum circle, where ships sometimes got lost forever. Pugwash began to back out of the cave, and the rocks began to talk again. Fold 'em, sub or mouse. She'll come back fast when she beholds that lighthouse. And that scary foghorn, added the 3rd rock. How do they know I'm scared of that sound? Pugwash thought to herself. But then, maybe the rocks were right. How could she go back up there? Pugwash decided to try to find another way out of the cave. She floated on through the cavern. And found another opening. But as soon as she was poking her nose out, a great light from above made her gasp out loud. Right away, she was sure what the light was. A monster lighthouse waiting for her up there. And if it was a monster lighthouse, she knew what was coming next. The biggest, loudest, scariest foghorn in the whole wide, wet ocean. At that very moment, Theodore and Emily were arriving at Shipwreck Rock. They could see Constance the Coast Guard ship and Stewiacke by the light of the big, bright full moon beaming down on the water. Theodore, called Constance, stay close to the shore and out of the way. Emily, you come with me. I know I can help find Pugwash, Theodore said softly, but no one else believes I can. Theodore was floating towards the shore when Lunenburg's light hit his face. Lighthouse, he said to himself. Foghorn, he added. Suddenly, Theodore had an idea where Pugwash was, but Constance had told him to stay close to the shore. Oh, what should I do? He tried to decide. Constance was leading the search team, shining her powerful searchlight at the water. There's only a cave down there, said Northumberland, rising to the surface. The submarine was helping look for Pugwash, too. It was too small for me to go inside, added Northumberland, but I didn't see Pugwash anywhere. Turn off that light, a voice called out. It was Theodore. You're scaring Pugwash, he added. Theodore, what are you talking about? Said Constance. Pugwash is afraid of lighthouses, Theodore said quickly, especially foghorns. Theodore, we don't know what you're talking about, said Emily. She always dives when she sees a lighthouse, Theodore replied. She won't come up because she thinks Constance's searchlight shining down on her is a lighthouse too. Are you sure about this? Said Constance. She always does, repeated Theodore. Very well, said Constance, turning off her searchlight. We'll try this. Everyone held their breath. And then? Nothing. No sign of Pugwash. We'll keep looking my way, said Constance, turning her searchlight on again. We must have missed something the first time. Theodore, it's time you went home. The others began to head off again. I was sure I was right, Theodore said to himself. At least the moon is shining, said Northumberland, beginning to dive again. It's as bright as a lighthouse down there. Lighthouse, repeated Theodore. Wait, he shouted out loud. What is it now, Theodore? Said Constance. Pugwash is down there. She won't come up because she's afraid of the light from the moon. I thought you said she was afraid of the lighthouse, said Constance, beginning to lose her temper. Or was it my searchlight? Well, which is it, Theodore? From under the water, continued Theodore, she might think the moon is a giant lighthouse shining down on her. What are we going to do? Said Stuyak. Make the moon go away? Theodore saw that Owen, the giant oil rig, was nearby. That's exactly what we're going to do, he said. We have to move Owen here, now. Theodore, snapped Constance, I've heard just about enough of your wild ideas for one night. We know how to search for someone out here. My friend is down there, said Theodore, with a voice as hard as the steel he was built from. And I'm going to find her. I'll help you, Emily said quietly. I hope you're right about this, Constance said slowly. I hope I'm right too, Theodore thought to himself. Pugwash was still staring at the beam of light. She was sure that with a light that big, there must be a horrible foghorn sound with it. The fear almost froze her where she floated. Far above, Theodore and Emily were using every bit of strength they had to move Owen over Ecum Secum Circle. Here I come to make the moon disappear, hollered Owen in his extra loud voice. That the light was going out. Lighthouses don't stop shining their lights, she said to herself. She began to wonder if that bright light really had been a lighthouse. At last, the big oil rig was in position. The tugs had got him between the moon and the water like a giant umbrella. Turn off your lights, Theodore called. Everyone did what he asked. No sign of her, said Northumberland. Theodore heard Lunenburg's foghorn in the distance, and he had another idea. Before he could think about what to do, Theodore blew his loudest whistle. In the dark depths, Pugwash heard something. Something familiar. Could it be Theodore's whistle? Or was it those rocks playing tricks on her? Theodore would be trying to find me, she decided. It must be him. And it really is time to be an undersea explorer. This isn't working, said Constance. Wait, just a little longer, please, called Theodore. Look, cried Northumberland. It was Pugwash. Pugwash was safe. Everyone blew their loudest whistles. Hooray! Hooray for Pugwash! Hooray for Theodore! Pugwash and Theodore floated very close to each other. I knew you'd know how to find me, Theodore, Pugwash said softly. You're going to make a great ocean tug. And I knew you'd be okay, Pugwash, smiled Theodore. You're already a great undersea explorer.
Wasn't that a good idea Theodore had, to get everyone to turn off their lights? Wish I had a good idea about how to make my fish happy. I just know something's wrong, even if no one else thinks so. Wait a minute. Turn off their lights. That's it. It's night, and I'm here at the office very late. And usually, I turn the light in the tank off because it's time for my fish to go to sleep. There. Thanks for visiting us here in the Big Harbor. We'll see y'all again next time. Oh, they look much happier.
Theodore.
There's another story coming right up, and you can always learn more about Theodore Tugboat on the internet. Find us through PBS Online.
Pushing and a pulling in the great big harbor, in the great big world is so much fun. So many brand new things to discover. Waking with the sun, gotta get the job done. Oh, Theodore and Emily, Voda, Hank and George George and the harbor master too.
Ahoy, Natalie Explorer. You may enter the harbor now. Hello. Boy, there sure are a lot of ships visiting the big harbor today. And it's part of my job as the harbor master, both to tell them when it's their turn to come in. Excuse me. Roger. Cumberland Container. Yes, you may enter the harbor now. You know, just between you and me, it's kind of fun giving orders. You know, I think George would certainly agree with me on that. See, George loves to give orders. Except once in a while, George gives too many orders. Well, like the time the tugs were trying to solve an underwater mystery.
Prepare to turn,
ordered George.
Preparing to turn,
Answered Theodore. Theodore was helping George dock a big cargo ship.
slow down,
Called George.
slow down.
Slowing, called Theodore. George whistled a big George whistle. It always felt great being in charge and telling everyone what to do,
Start pushing.
he commanded. George sure is being bossy today, thought Theodore. At last, the ship was safely at her dock. Theodore took a deep, happy breath. Now came his favorite part of working with George.
Let's go home.
Shouted George. George's last order of the day.
Wait. That's Foduk's emergency whistle.
Said George. And sure enough, Foduk was steaming towards the tugs, making his most important face.
I believe I've located something beneath the harbor.
He announced.
What did he say?
Said George.
I think Foduk said he found something under the water.
Explained Theodore. You see, sometimes Foduk uses very large words.
Let's go.
Ordered George right away. And off he roared, followed by Foduk. Oh no, groaned Theodore. Now I have to listen to more of George's orders.
It's right under here,
Said Foduk.
It's making some kind of emergency signal.
I wonder what it is.
Said Theodore.
I really don't know, said Foduk. It's a mystery. An underwater mystery, Theodore said thoughtfully. Well, we have to raise it up. I think I have an idea.
We'll hook it with our anchors.
Shouted George, swinging into action.
Follow me, Theodore.
Well, Theodore didn't say anything. It was no use trying to tell George what to do.
Theodore,
Said George, butting up against him.
this way.
But Foduk said it was over here.
Replied Theodore.
Just do what I say.
Snorted George. All of George's orders felt like they were building up inside Theodore's smokestack, ready to explode.
You find it yourself, George.
He said at last. Wow, George was very surprised to see everyone always did what he said.
Oh, there's probably nothing important under here anyway.
He grumbled, as if he really didn't care.
Let's just go home.
Well, this was one of George's orders Theodore would gladly listen to.
Wait. I've just received word on my radio.
Said Foduk, hurrying over.
A big ship is heading right this way. Well, we were leaving anyway.
Said George.
You don't understand,
Foduk continued.
that ship might be damaged by the underwater thing. I shall have to declare this an official harbor emergency.
Now, an official harbor emergency is a very serious matter indeed.
We can't raise this thing.
Said George.
We can't even see where it is.
I have a plan.
Said Theodore quietly.
Well, let's listen to Theodore's plan,
Called Foduk.
or we'll have to close the harbor. Well,
Said George.
Okay.
But inside, he really wasn't very happy about not giving the orders. Theodore asked George to get Shelburne the sea barge. And Theodore returned, leading Northumberland's submarine.
Theodore,
Frowned George.
why did you ask me to get Shelburne? And what's Northumberland doing here?
Northumberland will dive down and find the underwater thing, explained Theodore. And then Shelburne can raise it up with his special salvage crane.
Well, right away, George could see it was a good plan.
Northumberland, start diving,
He commanded, getting his big voice back.
Shelburne,
Directed George.
start raising your crane.
Shelburne began to raise his crane, slowly.
Hurry up!
Ordered George.
Northumberland, dive!
Well, Theodore knew Shelburne just couldn't be rushed. And Northumberland, well, Northumberland just hated loud noise,
Hey, my hat!
said George.
Oops. Sorry, George.
Said Shelburne. George could tell that everything was going all wrong, and this time he knew why. Theodore, he said quietly, just tell me what to do. I'm ready. Well, Theodore quietly sent Northumberland down to the bottom. And then he got Shelburne to slowly lower his crane hook. And the hunt for the underwater mystery began. Northumberland dove deeper and deeper beneath the inky waters of the big harbor. Up above, Vodak was listening carefully to the sub on his special radio.
I think,
Northumberland called to Vodak on his radio.
I think I found something.
It was like nothing the sub had ever seen before. Nothing under the water or above the water either.
He found it.
Shouted Vodak.
Push Shelburne this way. Pushing. Pushing!
Soon, Shelburne felt a deep thunk on the end of his line.
You hooked it.
Radioed Northumberland.
We've hooked it.
Repeated Vodak.
Now, pull.
Shelburne began to pull up his cable.
It's very heavy.
He said.
Hold Shelburne steady.
Radioed Northumberland.
Hold Shelburne steady.
Vodak called to George and Theodore.
Holding steady.
The two tugs called as they muscled the big barge steady. Vodak could see the great ship making the final turn towards the big harbor.
We have to hurry.
He shouted. Suddenly, Shelburne's crane just stopped,
Something's stuck.
groaned Shelburne.
Northumberland, what happened down there?
Radioed Vodak.
It's caught under a rock.
Northumberland called back.
We'll have to move the barge around the rock.
Radioed Northumberland.
Tell us where to go, Northumberland. Over this way.
Radioed the sub.
Bring Shelburne closer to me.
Vodak called to the tugs. Well, George and Theodore didn't waste a beat of their engines.
Slow down.
Radioed Northumberland.
We're going to lose it. Slow down, repeated Foduck. Turn a bit, George. Turning.
George was straining and smiling. Even though it was very hard work, it was very exciting.
It's free,
radioed Northumberland.
Now, stop. Stop.
Ordered Foduck.
Stopping.
Stopping! Together, with Northumberland looking, Foduck listening, Theodore and George struggling until their bumpers ached, keeping Shelburne steady. And Shelburne giving one last mighty heave of its cable, they raised the underwater mystery.
Good work, everyone.
Called Northumberland.
We got it.
George was sounding very excited.
But what is it?
Said Theodore.
Fascinating.
Said Foduck, floating closer.
I believe it's a satellite.
They usually fly way up in the sky, around the Earth. But this one must have fallen into the ocean.
Well, let's get you out of the way,
Theodore said to Shelburne. The sun was almost setting by the time the tired tugs had brought Shelburne to his dock. George hadn't said a word all the way back. He'd been thinking hard about something.
I guess, he said at last, I guess I can't always give the orders.
You're right, said Theodore quietly.
From now on,
Continued George,
I won't give any more orders.
well, not always, said Theodore with a little smile.
Then you just wouldn't be George,
Added Foduck.
You're right.
Said George with a great big grin.
Let's go home.
I mean,
Do you want to go home now? Let's go home.
shouted Theodore and Foduck. George whistled his great big George whistle. Oh, it always felt great being part of a team. It sure is fun working together here in the big harbor. What's that? Uh-oh. How did this happen? It seems I've ordered 2 ships in together. The only trouble is I don't have enough tugboats to bring them both in at the same time. What am I going to do? The ships are trying to tell me something. Thanks! Oh, that's a great idea. Those ships said they would take turns coming in. Thanks for visiting us here in the big harbor. We'll see you all again next time. Why didn't I think of that?
Theodore,
There's another story coming right up, and you can always learn more about Theodore Tugboat on the internet. Find us through PBS Online.
pushing and a pulling in the great big harbor, in the great big world is so much fun. So many brand new things to discover. Waking with the sun, gotta get the job done. Oh, Theodore and Emily, Foduck, Hank and George, and the harbor master too.
Hello. My old bell here needs a good polish to get it all shiny again. But I'm all out of polish. I better get another can. I have some more on my desk right here.
I wonder what's in this box. Would you look at that? Seashells. Oh, I collected all these shells myself.
Well, look at this one. You see, it has ruffles and it seems kind of delicate, but actually it's very strong. Oh, and this one. It's all shiny and smooth like glass. Boy, oh boy. Well, you know, you can spend hours and hours looking at things from the ocean. Pugwash knows all about that. Theodore woke up one fine morning.
Rise and shine, Pugwash, he smiled. I I'm up, smiled Pugwash. Theodore was taking care of Pugwash, the mini-sub, while Stewiak, her carrier ship, was in the repair dock. After the morning work meeting, Theodore set off with Pugwash for his first job of the day. We have lots of important things to do today, said Theodore. Pugwash? Where was she? Pugwash was following Philip, one of the fairy twins. Or was it Fillmore? It was always hard to tell those twins apart. Ooh, she said, and started following the other fairy. Pugwash, whistled Theodore. Coming, Theodore. Theodore smiled. He knew that Pugwash just loved to wander off and explore things. Meanwhile, over at the Great Ocean Dock, the dispatcher was talking to Foduck.
A report has come from Kayley's Cove of cargo falling off a ship. It could be something dangerous,
said Foduck seriously.
I would like you to check it out, please.
The dispatcher told him.
Of course, said Foduck. I am the safety tug. And George will go with you,
added the dispatcher.
I will,
said George.
George,
repeated Foduck.
I am qualified to go by myself. George will take Shelburne the sea barge along with Pugwash, said the dispatcher, in case there is anything on the bottom of the ocean that needs to be brought up. Please proceed immediately.
Well, the two tugs weren't very happy. You see, they both wanted to be the tug in charge of an important mission. Theodore took Pugwash to the salvage team who were setting out for Kayley's Cove.
This is an important mission, announced Foduck. Follow proper procedures at all times. Safety first. Is my engine louder than Foduck's?
George asked Theodore. Well, it's,
Is my emergency flag on straight?
Foduck interrupted. Theodore had to smile at his two friends. Sometimes they seemed to be thinking about the strangest things. Ooh, can I have a signal flag too, Theodore? When they got to Kayley's Cove, Troro, the fishing trawler, told the salvage team what he had seen. It was late last night and pretty dark, but I'm sure I saw something fall off a ship passing by.
Don't panic,
said Foduck calmly.
I'll take over from here. Well, I'm trained to deal with this,
said George, butting in front of Foduck.
Mini-sub ready?
Ready and waiting, called Pugwash eagerly.
Lower away,
commanded Foduck, butting in front of George. Shelburne slowly began to lower his cable.
Tug on the end of the cable if you can find something,
George reminded Pugwash. Then we'll raise it up with the cable, said Foduck. Diving! Is that a siren? Foduck looked around for the owner of the voice. Then he looked down. It was Dorothy Dory.
Why, yes,
said Foduck.
Yes, it is.
Can you blow it? Said Dorothy breathlessly.
It's not a toy,
said Foduck sternly.
It's an important piece of safety equipment. But I could show you my special signal flag.
George didn't like Foduck getting all the attention.
I have two engines,
he trumpeted, turning to Troro.
I can go backwards as fast as most ships can go forwards.
Down below, Pugwash had arrived at the bottom of the ocean. She looked this way and that, and soon spotted an oil barrel. That's what must have fallen off that ship, she thought to herself. It really wasn't dangerous, but it should be brought up. Pugwash was about to tug on her line to tell the others, when something caught her eye. Ah, she said. And off off she went to see what it was. Up above, Foduck had decided to give Dorothy a little safety lesson while he was waiting for Pugwash to tug the cable.
If you ever see these flags, he was saying, it means danger. Stay away.
Now can I hear your siren? Pleaded Dorothy. George was showing off for Toro, vrooming and booming his powerful engine as loud as he could. Beneath them, Pugwash was examining the things she saw. It was just an old anchor. But then, something else caught her attention. Something wavy and wild-looking, not too far away. So, off she went to explore the new mystery. Back in the big harbor, Theodore was finishing docking a small cargo ship. He glanced around, expecting to see Pugwash and the salvage team returning from Kayley's Cove. But they were nowhere in sight. "They've been gone a long time," he said, gazing towards the harbor entrance. "I hope Pugwash hasn't wandered off again." Theodore decided to ask the dispatcher if he could go and check if everything was all right. Deep beneath the waves, Pugwash had discovered that the wavy, wild-looking mystery was kelp, a giant ocean plant. "Oh," she gasped, and slowly entered the kelp jungle, pretending she was hunting tiger sharks. Meanwhile, Theodore was making his way to Kayley's Cove. When he rounded the last bend of the cove, he was in for quite a surprise. Foduck was flying all his signal flags, while George was racing around Truro backwards.
Don't try this in your cove,
He hollered to the fishing trawler.
Theodore!
Grinned George, whizzing around, booming and booming his big engine.
What are you doing out here?
"Did you find anything?" said Theodore.
What's that?
George called over his own engine.
I can't quite hear you.
"Did you find anything dangerous?" Theodore shouted. Foduck noticed Theodore.
Well, yes. Yes, I did, he said. That lighthouse has a burnt-out bulb.
"I mean, did Pugwash find the overboard cargo?" frowned Theodore.
Oh,
Said Foduck.
oh.
Added George. "Where is Pugwash?" said Theodore, looking around.
She's right here, said Foduck, on the end of Shelburne's cable.
Shelburne began to raise his cable up, out of the water. "Uh-oh," said Theodore.
It's all my fault, Foduck said. I should have paid more attention to what I was doing. No, it's my fault that Pugwash is gone, said George. I wasn't paying attention.
"Nope, it was me," insisted Foduck.
No,
George started to say. They were startled by Theodore's whistle. "It doesn't matter who wasn't paying attention," he said. "What's important right now is to pay attention to finding Pugwash." Well, right away, everyone knew Theodore was right.
I'll use my special underwater sonar, said Foduck right away. I'll stand by with Shelburne, said George.
"I hope Pugwash hasn't gone too far," said Theodore. Down below, Pugwash heard a pinging sound. "Maybe it's a whale trying to talk to me," she thought, and she pinged back.
I hear something, cried Foduck. That way.
Theodore had an idea. "Shelburne, lower your cable again." The big barge slowly began to lower his cable back into the water. Pugwash followed Foduk's pinging and saw something floating in the water. She quietly cruised over to see what it was.
I feel something moving my cable,
called Shelburne. Pull it up, cried Theodore. Everyone held their breath as Shelburne hauled his cable up again. And soon, Pugwash popped to the surface, safe and sound. Hi, everyone! Everyone blew their whistles. Hooray! In no time at all, the team raised the oil barrel and headed back to the big harbor.
Next time, said Foduk, we'll pay attention to what we're doing. We sure will,
said George. Me too, added Pugwash. I can't wait to get home and tell everyone about our adventure, smiled Theodore.
Let's hurry,
said Shelburne in his slow voice. Oh, said Theodore. The tugs all turned to where Theodore was looking. The sun was setting over the edge of the ocean in a beautiful red glow. What were we doing? Said Theodore. Well, everyone had a very good laugh about that.
Pugwash sure loves to explore. Now, what was I doing? Oh, yes, I was looking at my shell collection. No, before that. I was polishing my bell. Here's a new can of polish. And now I can finish my job. Thanks for visiting us here in the Big Harbor. We'll see you all again next time. I wonder, does a shiny bell sound louder? Oh, well, it certainly seems louder. I never noticed how nice my bell sounds. I'm doing it again, aren't I? Maybe I'll ring my bell when I finish polishing. So long.
Theodore, he's a tugboat and a friendly tugboat too. A friendly tugboat too. Oh, Theodore likes to do the things that friendly tugboats do. Pushing and a pulling in the great big harbor, in the great big world is so much fun. So many brand new things to discover. Waking with the sun, gotta get the job done. Oh, Theodore and Emily, Foduk, Hank and George, and the harbor master too.
Doink. PBS Kids.